All right, welcome back to another episode of the ATM Forward podcast. I'm your host, Rhet, and today's episode is all about helping new ATM operators understand what it really takes to get started. Here to help me is a familiar face on the podcast, Jon Christiansen. Welcome back, Jon.
Hey, how's it going, Rhet? Thanks for having me.
Well, I don't know about you, but I constantly get phone calls asking about how to get into the industry, or I know of a good location I want to buy a machine, but they don't really understand the full process. People think that you can, put a machine in a store, plug it in, and away you go. So today we're going to go over a few things that should help new operators get started. One of the first questions when I get that, I want a machine, one of the first questions I ask is, do you have a processor? And a lot of times the line goes silent. Can you help the listeners understand why they need a processor and what a processor is?
Yeah. So a processor, I think in the most layman terms, they're your middleman between the ATM and the customer's financial institution. So they're the ones processing and encrypting like the bank information so that it stays secure and, gets that communication between the bank and the ATM. So with that, you have to set up an account, and a lot of times you'll just go to what's known as an ISO. It's an independent sales organization that manages that relationship with the processor for you. So set up your account so that you can set up your new ATM terminal and have it process transactions successfully. So I think I agree. I get a lot of those questions, and sometimes people don't know who their processor is, but that is essentially, it's just this middleman that's sending all that information back and forth.
And also, they're the ones that pay you, right? They're the ones that, once the customer takes the money out of the account, they're the ones paying you back that money and the surcharge fee.
Correct. Yep. So they're setting up that surcharge and allocating funds to whatever parties are involved. So if you are maybe working with a merchant or maybe all of the sometimes the surcharge is split up into different, to different people who are working on the machine. Anyway, that's what that's for.
All right. Well, before even hardware, because people call me for the hardware piece, but before hardware, I try and explain a processor, because you're definitely going to want to set that relationship up before you buy the machine, because it doesn't work without that. So thanks for going over that.
Yeah.
We'll probably talk more about that later on when we talk about programming as well.
Yes. And I guess at that point, once you kind of have that underway and you've got a relationship with a processor, you kind of determine what kind of machine you want. And there's certainly a bunch of different types for different installation situations. So, whether you want a through-the-wall one, if you think it's going to be a really busy location, you can get it with multiple cash boxes so that you can make sure it's flush with cash. Some of them are, built for outdoors and more for just inside your business. So when you've got eyes on it all the time. So a bunch of different varieties, and I'm sure Rhet's sales team can walk you through, the different options you might be interested in. But
Awesome.
Once you have your machine, then we get into programming, right?
So most of the machines that we see customers working with today are probably mostly Hyosung, Gen Mega, and some Triton, which all have similar features, parts, and upkeep. Say I have a machine in my garage, I figured out a processor. What can I do as a customer to familiarize myself with the ATM or the equipment that I have? What should I look over before I actually take that to the location?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you first get your machine and unbox it, my suggestion would be to just take a look at everything, boot it up, and familiarize yourself with the main components. A lot of, like you said, most of the manufacturers, they all have a lot of similarities. You'll have your screen display, your main control board that is your brain of the ATM, like computer. It's telling every item what to do. And then you've got your main components. So a cash dispenser, which is down in the vault, protected by a electronic lock. In your startup kit, you'll get instructions on how that lock works. You'll get keys to the various bezels so that you can access your machine. And then inside the upper cabinet, in addition to the main board, you've got your card reader, your printer, and your power supply. I think that's really the main things you want to, components of each ATM. Your main board, your dispenser, your printer, card reader, power supply, and your screen. All of those things are pretty easy to work with. If you've done anything with computers before, and simple electronics, you'll be able to handle an ATM. So yeah, I guess from there, I mean, the more familiar you are with your machine, the better you are going to be at like efficiently taking care of it, doing any maintenance it might need. But it takes care of itself if you if you're on top of it.
All right.
Yeah.
So we familiarized ourselves with the machine. We kind of know what it looks like. A lot of times when you're new, you're probably doing a lot of tech support over the phone. So it's good to kind of know what you're looking at. So we have everything ready to go. We have our processor. We've looked over the machine. Programming and setup. I would say for a first-time customer, this is probably going to be the hardest to understand. What are the next steps? What do we need to do from the processor standpoint? What do we need to do as the consumer to get this ATM program?
Yeah, good question. So when you set up with the processor, you'll get a couple things. You'll get an identification ID for that particular ATM. And that's associated with a set of, we call master keys or DES keys. Those, if you think about it, it's this long codex of a bunch of letters and numbers, and it basically scrambles the bank information as it goes to the processor so that anyone can't intercept that data and get to it. So that's going to be unique for each terminal. And once you have that, you've set up with your processor, you'll need to program that into your machine. The nice thing, all the manufacturers, I believe, certainly the ones I'm familiar with intimately, will have a quick setup option in your menu. So the first time you log into your machine, there's a sequence you'll get familiar with on most. It's going to be enter, clear, cancel, 1, 2, 3, and you can type in your password. And once you're in, there's a quick setup option that will kind of just take you step by step through the programming. And as long as you know who your processor is, it will automatically fill in a lot of that information for you. I think it's also helpful to be aware, if you do choose to do that quick setup option, when you're finished with it, you should still go through the menus on your own and kind of find those settings that it automatically took you to. That way, if you have a future problem, you're going to be familiar with where that is. But it is pretty easy. You're basically just setting up a network connection with your internet router. That's a big step, I guess. Some locations will just hook it up to, historically, a phone line.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see those too often anymore, but it's still a possibility. Internet's going to be a little more stable and faster, and certainly the way to go if you can. But yeah, once that's set up, you have a few processor options. So, where you're routing it, your surcharge information that we talked about. And then beyond that, the day-to-day is going to be just loading your cash. So you'll settle it and get a report from each settlement period that'll kind of tell you what's been dispensed, what's been, maybe if there were any jammed bills, it'll have all of those rejected bills all written out for you, so that you can manage your day-to-day business with the ATM. And I guess if you do have any issues too, there's diagnostics menus where you can test out each component, your card reader, your dispenser, and even a report menu of error codes. So if you get an error code on your machine, you can look that up in the report menu, and it'll tell you exactly what that error code means and how to fix it.
And that's why it's good to get to know kind of what the machine is and where the parts are, because when they call you, you're going to tell them, hey, you need to look at this, this, this. And if they don't know what they're looking at, then you're not going to be much help. So, they've programmed their machine, which you made it sound really easy, and it is. Especially, they've made it easier with the quick setup menu. I remember it was a lot more difficult. But you've set your denominations, which is a big deal, because if you accidentally put 50 and you only have 20s in there, it could really screw things up. So denominations is a big deal, right?
Absolutely. Yep. You'll set up that beforehand, and they even have little blockers on the cassette. So if you have a cassette as your cash box, so if you have multiple cash boxes and they take different denominations, say you've got maybe 5s and 20s. You want to make sure you don't put the 5s in the 20 slot. Otherwise, people will be getting, the wrong denomination, and that'll screw up your accounting pretty heavily, right?
You could lose a lot of money too that way.
Yeah, exactly. So there are protections there, so you can set up your cassette that it will only fit into one slot so you can't accidentally put it in the wrong one. So yeah, there's little things like that, and denomination surcharge. I guess the programming. Yeah, I think we've gone over most of that, but yeah. I guess we do have the other video that we've already done that has some more in-depth error troubleshooting for common issues. So I invite you to check that out. But if you run into any issues, our support team here is always happy to help kind of get your foot through the door. Yeah, I guess I mentioned the day-to-day management too. I guess going further with that, I think we get a lot of questions about that too. How about you over in sales?
We get tons of questions about just your day-to-day. Well, there's a lot. You know a lot more than I do, but the risks, how to pull reports if customers have questions about, oh, I didn't get all my money, things like that. These are day-to-day issues you're going to run into. So why don't you go over a few of the ones that you hear most, because you're probably hearing a lot more than I am.
Yeah, so you'll occasionally maybe get a dispute. Say a cardholder puts in a bent card, and for some reason the transaction isn't read properly, and they get a bank denial or something like that. Or maybe a bill gets jammed in the cash dispenser when it's trying to come through. Maybe there's a little fold in it, and it just wasn't able to make it through. Things like that will happen. And when you go to diagnose that, you can look in your ATM journal. There will be, you can verify what was dispensed at that point. And I think more so what people are curious about too is cash scheduling and how to manage if you've got multiple machines, how to make sure when the machine is running out of cash. And that's where your processor portal comes in. The processor that you set up an account with will have a lot of tools at your disposal. In addition to managing disputes, you'll want to utilize your processor portal. It will show you a breakdown of transactions throughout the day so that you can match those with what's on your ATM. Obviously, most of the time it's going to line up perfectly, but when you're getting a bill jam or a dispute, you want to verify that. So part of your day-to-day management is going to be heavily relied on your processor portal. It makes it really nice for you to kind of manage that.
What are the most common issues? Maybe they should have an extra part on hand, or certain tools or things to clean sensors. Is there anything that you could recommend for that?
Yeah, no, totally. I think as an ATM technician, and as you're getting into the business, you'll figure out what tools you want. But I think it's good to have a little go bag with you, just so you have the bare minimum to fix whatever might come at you. A screwdriver is really the only major tool that you'll need. Most components are with a standard Phillips. So having one of those, maybe a jumper. So electronics, if you're familiar with PCB boards, a lot of them will have sets of pins that you jump for various things, like resetting a control board is really what you're going to be using it for. But those are handy. They're just these little caps. If you don't have that, a screwdriver will work because you essentially just need something metal. The keys that we mentioned at the beginning in your start kit, keys to access your bezel, keys to access your vault and your cash boxes. A laptop is really handy if you're having issues with maybe your software or communication with the local network. Having a laptop on hand that you can either use to troubleshoot the connection, you can swap your Ethernet cable back and forth. Also, you can download software from our website for free. So if you need to update your machine, if there was a bug, or if you just purely needed to take advantage of a new feature, you can download that from our website and transfer it to your ATM. So having a laptop is really handy. Maybe another thing, over time, your CDU will encounter, maybe just dust will fall on some of the sensors. So you'll find sensors, optical sensors along the belt path. So as the cash moves through, there are little sensors checking and making sure your bills are good and they're coming through correctly so that there aren't any problems. But sometimes those optical sensors get residue or dust. And to clean those, I think it's best to use either a Q-tip or a microfiber cloth, like something you would use to clean your eyeglasses is great. But really in a pinch, a cotton t-shirt will work. Just anything that's not too abrasive. Paper rolls are great to have. I think beyond that, I think you'll be good to go. I think card readers tend to get dirty as well over time, maybe the fastest thing. So if you want to use those card reader waffle cleaners that you can get just about anywhere, those can help. Maybe a can of compressed air. maybe I said a lot more than I expected, but
Yeah.
really, I think bare minimum is going to be your screwdriver, microfiber cloth, and a laptop, and that'll get you really far. Yeah, I don't know if you encounter any problems, you can always call in, and we can help you through the heavier stuff.
All right. Well, let's end on risk management. I think we went over it a tad bit on the last episode, and people can go back and watch that. But what would you suggest, just basic, to provide risk management so their machine won't be at risk? What can they do?
Now, good. This is definitely one of the most common things that people call in about, and it's something you want to be really familiar with. So the main three things I would say is making sure your main board's software is up to date. Most manufacturers are releasing new software updates that include bug fixes, new features, and new protections, maybe at least twice a year, if not quarterly. So just make sure you're checking in and making sure your machine is up to date. That will be great. One of the key features on your machine that you want to take advantage of is CDU binding. It's essentially you're binding your dispenser, your cash dispenser, to your main board of your ATM. And what that does is if someone tries to, maybe a hacker comes to the machine and wants to introduce their own device to tell your dispenser to dispense all of its cash, your dispenser will know that this is a foreign device, so it won't communicate with it. So by pairing it to your main board, that's going to be a big thing there. And managing your passwords well. So use passwords to log into the machine. Use passwords if you use a service called remote monitoring. This is an additional thing you can purchase if you want to manage your machine remotely. So if you're using that, there are passwords involved as well. Just make sure that your passwords are secure and unique and can't be guessed. And if you have multiple machines, making sure they're unique by machine is also important. That way, if one machine gets found out, you're not losing your entire fleet.
Awesome, Jon. Well, you gave us a lot of knowledge today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast again. This is very helpful information for new operators. And I thank you for listening to the ATM Forward podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Rhet. See ya.